All right. First, the good news. Deji, don't look so shocked when I say good news. Um, I know. Well, the good news is that this is the last briefing of the year. Fingers crossed. If we wind up briefing before the end of the year, it will there will be a lot of bad news. So we will post the updates online starting tomorrow. The office will be staffed during daylight hours, um, except obviously for Christmas Day and New Year's Day. And if you need anything, call somebody else, not me. Um, uh, Let me start with Sudan. Just to flag that this afternoon there will be a Security Council meeting on Sudan, an open briefing. Our Assistant Secretary General for the Middle East, Asia, and Pacific, Khaled Khiari, from the Department of Political and Peacebuilding Affairs, will brief. Also briefing will be the Director of OCHA's Crisis Response Division, Edem Wosornu. She will brief, of course, on the humanitarian aspect of the Sudan crisis. But I can tell you in advance of that briefing that we are, of course, deeply concerned by the escalating violence that is continuing to place civilians at grave risks and triggering new waves of displacement, new waves of human suffering, particularly in the Kordofan regions. Our humanitarian colleagues tell us that in South Kordofan State, displacement has increased sharply in recent days. Our friends at the International Organization for Migration estimate that on Friday, heightened insecurity drove nearly 500 people to flee villages in the locality of Reif Shargi and seek refuge in Kadugli and surrounding areas, as well as in North Kordofan State. Displacements into White Nile State is also rising, with more than 15,000 human beings arriving from the Kordofan region since late October. That's what local authorities are telling us. And in eastern Sudan, local authorities yesterday reported the arrival of some 400 people in Gedaref. They arrived there from Baba Nusa and Hejlig, towns that are in the West Kordofan State. While community kitchens have provided immediate food support, shelter assistance is urgently needed, particularly as we expect more people to arrive seeking safety. Meanwhile, in the Darfur region, the International Organization for Migration estimates that more than 107,000 people were displaced from North Darfur State capital El Fasher and surrounding villages between late October, when the Rapid Support Forces, as you recall, violently took over the city, and early December. Many had already been displaced multiple times, fleeing camps such as Zamzam and Abu Shuk. Our partners report that last week, more than 2,500 people displaced from El Fasher and surrounding areas arrived in the locality of Sharia in South Darfur State. These newly arrived families urgently need food, they urgently need essential relief item, and they urgently need health services. Civilians in the Darfur region continue to face deadly violence. On Saturday, a drone strike reportedly hit a busy market in Al-Mala in North Darfur State, killing at least 10 people. That's what first responders are telling us. The violence is part of a broader pattern that continues to devastate Sudan's health system. WHO warns that attacks on healthcare facilities have reached alarming levels. In 2025 alone, 65 such attacks in Sudan caused more than 1,600 deaths. That's accounting for over 80% of all global deaths from attacks on healthcare in complex emergencies last year worldwide. As the year draws to a close, we continue to urge all parties to immediately halt attacks on civilians and civilian infrastructure, uphold international humanitarian law, and ensure safe, unhindered humanitarian access so the year is not marked by the same misery as we've seen previously. Turning to the situation in Gaza, our colleagues at the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tells us that humanitarians continue to deliver assistance to help the most vulnerable families endure the dire situation on the ground, especially during this cold and wet season. Over the past 24 hours, and despite the ceasefire. We have continued to receive reports of airstrikes, shelling, and gunfire in all 5 governorates of Gaza. This has resulted in reported casualties and disruptions to humanitarian operations. Yesterday, a rescue mission to reach an injured person in Gaza was denied. Amid the severe lack of shelter across the Strip, people are staying in buildings that are either partially or mostly damaged as they try to protect their families from elements. Our partners in Gaza said over the weekend several buildings collapsed due to stormy conditions, with casualties reported. A reminder that 3/4 of women-headed households urgently need shelter support and 2/3 urgently need clothing. That's what the Gender in Humanitarian Action Working Group has found. Our partners continue to work to improve access to dignified shelter for approximately 1.3 million people in Gaza. In the past week, about 3,500 families affected by storms or living in flood-prone areas received tents, bedding sets, mattresses, and they also received blankets. Additionally, more than 250,000 children received winter clothing. However, our partners estimate that 630,000 adolescents across the Gaza Strip still need winter clothing assistance. We and our partners continue to call once again for the lifting of all restrictions of the entry of aid into Gaza, including shelter material, as these obviously constrain our humanitarian response to reach all those people who need shelter, especially in this cold and rainy season. Meanwhile, we and our partners continue to coordinate humanitarian missions within Gaza. OCHA reports that yesterday half of such attempts were facilitated by Israeli authorities. Through these missions, humanitarian teams collected 6 full tankers of fuel, more than 270 pallets of medical supplies, and other essential items from the Karim Shalom Abu Salam crossing, as well as the Zikim crossing. Turning to the humanitarian situation in Ukraine, and our colleagues on the ground tell us that hostilities this weekend resulted in more civilian casualties and widespread damage to critical infrastructure. Between Friday and early morning, authorities report more than a dozen civilians were killed and over 70 others injured, including 2 children. Basic services disruptions were reported in over 270 towns and villages across the country. The region of Odessa was particularly hard hit. They've been experiencing almost daily attacks. On Friday, an overnight attack targeting port infrastructure killed 8 civilians and injured 27 others. That's what local authorities are telling us. Repeated strikes also caused power outage, affecting dozens of thousands of people. The regions of Dnipro, of Kharkiv, and Mykolaiv also sustained attacks on their energy infrastructure, with hundreds of thousands of people affected. The health facilities and a school were also damaged in the attack. Donetsk, Kherson, Zaporizhzhia also suffered casualties. Authorities also report that a warehouse storing humanitarian aid was damaged in the Mykolaiv region following an attack on Saturday. Meanwhile, evacuations from frontline and border areas are continuing. In Sumy, over the last 3 days, around 40 people were evacuated to safer areas, and in Donetsk region, nearly 330 civilians, including 50 children, were evacuated. Since June 1st, nearly 150,000 people have been evacuated from frontline areas, including more than 16,500 children and over 5,000 people with limited mobility. Humanitarians reached more than 700,000 people near the front lines with aid in the first 11th month of this year. However, funding gaps persist, as you would imagine, leaving more than 1 million people without safe water and limiting access to protection and gender-based violence services in those high-risk areas. This year's $2.6 billion humanitarian appeal for Ukraine is only half funded, with $1.4 billion having been received. Quick update from Julie Bishop, our special envoy on Myanmar. In carrying out her mandate, the special envoy engaged with all stakeholders relevant to the situation in Myanmar, including regional countries, Security Council, and General Assembly members. As part of the effort, she recently visited Myanmar for a 3rd time and met again with the Commander-in-Chief, Senior General Mint Aung Hlaing. In her engagements, Ms. Bishop continues to reiterate the urgent need for a cessation of violence to enable humanitarian response and recovery and protections of civilians, and underscores the need to keep Myanmar on the global agenda and provide sustained support towards a Myanmar-led, sustainable, inclusive, and peaceful solution to the protracted crisis. She did brief council members in close consultations this morning via video conference. And an update, and a rather lengthy one, from Somalia, for which we have not heard for a bit. Our humanitarian colleagues report that drought continues to impact millions of people across Somalia. Authorities estimate that more than 4.6 million people, or around about a quarter of the population of the country, are being impacted by the drought. Our partners indicate that at least 120,000 people were displaced between September and December. As water prices soar, food becomes increasingly scarce, livestock die, and livelihoods collapse. Education has also been severely impacted, with more than 75,000 students forced to drop out of school nationwide. The upcoming dry season between January and March is expected to make drought conditions worse. Increased water scarcity and higher livestock mortality are anticipated, potentially intensifying food insecurity in many parts of Somalia. The situation is also likely to drive more people from their homes towards urban areas and displacement sites, where living conditions and where livelihood opportunities are already extremely limited. Authorities are appealing for urgent assistance to avert a possible collapse of pastoral and farming livelihoods and prevent avoidable loss of life. They warn that the next 4 months will be critical, as the rainy season is not expected until April 2026. We and our humanitarian partners are mobilized, supporting assessment, mapping available supply stocks, and coordinating emergency response across water, food, nutrition, health, and shelter sectors. Our partners are also providing cash assistance, animal fodder, and rehabilitating boreholes as they visit field locations to assess the severity of the situation and review resources for early action. However, these efforts are constrained, yet again here, by significant funding shortfalls. The Central Emergency Response Fund from the UN allocated $10 million at the end of November, but substantially more support is urgently needed. The $1.4 billion humanitarian response plan for Somalia for 2025 is only 26% funded, with only $370 million received. Speaking of money, I have a little quiz for you today. You ready? Recent Secretaries General have had a long, crucial history with this country, assisting it on its hard-won road to independence.
East Timor.
Very good, E.D. Letter. And I was about to go to the second hint, which is the current Secretary General holds this country dear to his heart, having recently visited in 2024 to mark the 25th anniversary of the vote. We say thank you to our friends in Dili, East Timor, Timor-Leste's payment brings the number of fully paid-up member states to 149. Edie, what a way to end the year.
Thank you, Steph. A couple of follow-up questions. On Sudan, the president of Sudan, I understand, is here at the United Nations. The Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Sorry. Is he going to meet with the Secretary General?
The Secretary General is not here today. He's on his annual leave. We're trying to see who he may be meeting. I've asked, and I'm trying to find that out.
And secondly, on Venezuela, it's been reported from the region that President Maduro has asked a number of different bodies for assistance in light of the U.S. boarding of ships and pursuing of ships, including the United Nations. Has the UN received such a request?
I'm not aware, beyond the phone call the Secretary General and the President had, I think, last week, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not aware of any new communications, but we'll check. Madame, and then...
Going back to Sudan, is the Secretary General planning to go to Sudan? Because he has been traveling a lot, but not to Sudan.
Obviously, we are looking at a whole host of potential trips for the Secretary General for next year. It will depend on whether or not such a visit would be helpful. But I can tell you he's been spending a lot of his time focused on the situation there and through the work of his representative on the ground, Denise Brown, the work of his envoy, Mr. Lamamra, and the work of Mr. Fletcher and others.
Yeah, but don't you think his presence will make a difference?
He's very well aware of the potential of a visit. It just has to make sure that such a visit actually puts the process forward. Deji, then Joe, then Gabriel.
Couple of questions first. Today in Kuala Lumpur, the foreign ministers of ASEAN held a special meeting on the current situation between Cambodia and Thailand. They released a statement here in my hand. They just reaffirmed the shared commitment to refrain from threat of use of force and peaceful settlements. They urged both parties, Cambodia and Thailand, to exercise maximum restraint and also welcome the discussion on the resumption of the ceasefire, which will happen 2 days later. What is the response from the Secretary General on the latest statement by the ASEAN countries and on the latest
We
development?
very much welcome the statement by ASEAN and the role that Malaysia has been playing as chair of ASEAN, and obviously the role of the United States in helping get that agreement signed on the sidelines of the meeting earlier this year. I think it's important that both parties approach the meetings on the 24th in a spirit of ending this conflict.
All right. Next question on the contribution. Since last time, has the U.S. paid any regular budget?
No.
Not single? What about the peacekeeping one they promised?
I'd have to check on peacekeeping.
But not regular
not a
budget.
regular budget.
In terms, just like we have just one week or two left, do you expect any payment from U.S.?
Look, I don't want to say anything that would make a challenging situation worse.
Yeah, that's exactly why I asked this question. Without payment, how would the situation in the coming year, especially the first few months for 2026, be for the UN?
When member states vote a budget, right, and approve a budget, and when not all member states pay up to that budget, it makes the situation for the Secretary General, for all of those who manage the cash in this organization, extremely, extremely challenging. And I think, as the Secretary General has alluded to in the beginning of the year, he's instructed the Secretariat not to spend the 100% because we don't have it. The fact that member states either don't pay or pay late makes managing an organization where you can't borrow money like private sector or like governments, or you can't print money like governments can, rather difficult, and that would be an understatement.
Will the UN still be able to pay salaries? Let me put it in a very single term.
Through the end of the year, yes.
The beginning of next year?
Well, we have to have a budget first. We don't have spending authority for 2026 as of yet. Mr. Klein.
First, to follow up on that question, has the Secretary General himself or the Chef de Cabinet or the Deputy Secretary General reached out personally to any high-level Trump administration officials to inquire when they expect to at least make partial payment of the assessments?
I can tell you that the financial situation, the budget, the reform, the savings have been high on the agenda of all the contacts the Secretary General has had with Ambassador Waltz.
Well, no, I'm talking about the specific issue of non-payment by the U.S.
I understand. We are working through the U.S. mission, through Ambassador Waltz, and I can tell you that the Secretary General and the Ambassador, I think, have a very good professional and working relationship.
Okay, then now to one more general question, similar to what I asked, I think, last year, which is what would the Secretary General consider to be his biggest disappointment in 2025, and what is he most proud of in accomplishing in 2025?
Look, I think the Secretary General is extremely proud to have constantly, day in and day out, defended the ideals of this organization, defended the Charter, defended international law, defended multilateralism, which is his job. He will continue to do that with determination. He has, I think, squeezed every penny, every ounce of effort out of this organization to try to keep people alive on the humanitarian front, to try to make sure that people don't forget about development, and to work on peace and security with determination.
His biggest disappointment.
Well, I think I think what he fears is this continuing fragmentation of the world, the continuing disregard for the Charter, which too many member states are using as an a la carte menu, and this continuing disregard for international law.
Thanks, Steph.
Gabriel.
Thanks, Steph. You're looking right at me, so
I'm looking right at you, and your name is
looking through
Gabriel.
me.
So there were two things that would let you know that it is your time to ask a question.
Yeah, I know you're very helpful every day that they're at this briefing. When
Thank you. Well, you could stop there.
Okay, stop. Thank you very much. It's been a see you next year. No, just
Yeah.
on a serious note, I know you're very helpful about briefing us every day here that there's a new member state that pays their dues. Since we won't be seeing you for several days because of the holiday, if the U.S. pays, will your office inform us?
I think that would be newsworthy.
Thank you. Now I'm at a loss of words. No, just kidding.
I can come back to you.
That's all right. In all seriousness, I do want to ask about Sudan. In the latter half of September, during High Level Week, as you well know, there were a lot of meetings in this building and near this building and in missions about the situation in Sudan, probably more than in many previous High Level Weeks. It was spoken about in general terms as kind of a make or break moment for Sudan. Here we are several months later. Situation appears on many levels to be worse than it was in September. Can you give an overall assessment of how the SG feels about the progress that wasn't made in the latter part of this year?
I think he's extremely frustrated, not only for the lack of effort, but I think frustrated at the level of human suffering that we've been seeing in Sudan this year. I mean, to recall, this year has seen shelling of camps, of refugee and internally displaced camps, where famine had been recorded, where people are starving and they're being bombed. We've seen gunmen go into hospitals, maternity wards, kill women, kill babies, kill doctors, right? Those are just two of the most egregious things that we've seen. We've seen the bloody aftermath of the RSF takeover in El Fasher. We've seen, as the Secretary General put it, interference on the negative end by countries in the region and afar. I think the leaders of both sides here in Sudan, whether it's the government or the RSF, need to first and foremost put the interest of the Sudanese people in front, as do all of the regional powers and those further afield. Yes, Nemo, please.
Thank you,
Namo.
Stéphane. I have two questions. One on Sudan. A poll of 22 major aid organizations, a recent poll, has found that Sudan is the world's most neglected crisis. What's Secretary General's view of this? Why is there so much neglect for this African nation?
Listen, the neglect doesn't come from the Secretary General, the Secretariat, from the humanitarian organizations, from the NGOs. You all often ask about Sudan, and that is very much welcome. Every day, we try to keep Sudan in the news. Why it's neglected, I think if the Secretary General were here, would probably tell you there's probably an element of racism, right? That people don't pay as much attention to crises in the global media, crises in Africa, as they do in other parts of the world. There are also a lot of crises going on, a lot of human suffering, but we have to be able to keep all of these issues up front.
And my second question is on Syria. the Syrian Democratic Forces is accusing Damascus-affiliated forces of shelling predominantly Kurdish neighborhoods, namely Sheikh Maqsoud and Al-Ashrafiyah in northern Aleppo, and that has resulted in the injuries of 5 civilians, including a child, according to SDF. Have you seen these reports, and what message do you have as the United Nations for the Syrian government?
Yes, we've seen these very disturbing reports of increased clashes between the government of Syria, its security forces, and the SDF. We had seen earlier this year positive signs of discussions between the government and the SDF. We need everyone to return to these discussions on how to incorporate all of the various armed groups in Syria into the national framework through a Syrian-led and Syrian-led process. I mean, I think the situation on the ground is fragile in terms of intercommunal dynamics, but it is important there that the guns be silenced and that the discussions continue for the benefit of all Syrians, regardless of their religion or ethnicity. Yes.
Thank you,
And then,
Steve.
sorry, and then I will, I'm sorry, yeah, go ahead, you.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve, and then I hope Happy New Year. But
We can only hope.
yeah, my question is also about the UN regular budget, especially about the Fifth Committee. As I know, the Fifth Committee is going on the discussion for next year's regular budget. If the budget is not approved by the end of this year, what will Secretary General do? Do you have any plan B?
Well, either there's a budget or there's no budget. It's not, we can't, I mean, there's a responsibility for member states through the Fifth Committee to come up with a budget and for the General Assembly to approve it. We continue to work with the Fifth Committee. We continue to work with member states, answer all their questions or any concerns they may have, and we look forward to the adoption of a budget by the end of the year.
But it seems to be difficult to get a consensus.
It
for
is
now.
never easy to get consensus on a budget in the United Nations. But that's why we enjoy the process so much. Arul.
Is there any reaction to the attacks on minorities in Bangladesh and especially the lynchings of Hindus in the last few days?
Yes, we're very concerned about the violence that we've seen in Bangladesh, whether it's in Bangladesh or any other countries, that people who don't belong to the quote-unquote majority need to feel safe, and all Bangladeshis need to feel safe, and we're confident that the government will do what it can to keep every single Bangladeshi safe. Deji, I mean, with that sweater, how can I say no?
Thank you, because it's about this sweater. Okay.
No.
If we're living in the Stranger Things world with all the fragmentation of the world and the budget issue of the UN, how confident is UN to really close the rift to the upside down world, if there is one, to don't let the monsters out? Do you still feel
So
confident?
I have to tell you, I've never watched Stranger Things, so I'm
Okay.
a little lost into your analogies and cultural touch points here. I can tell you that the Secretary General looks at the world with very clear eyes, and what is also very clear is his determination to continue doing his work, defending the Charter, defending multilateralism, defending international law until the very last moment of his mandate. Gabriel, and then we'll go to the back.
Thanks, Steph. Going back to Thailand and Cambodia, the Cambodian Prime Minister mentioned over the weekend that the number of displaced Cambodians along the border is over 500,000 now after the fighting resumed earlier in December. Can you just update us on the UN's posture when it comes to the humanitarian situation?
I don't,
with this
it's a
fighting?
good question. I don't have, I'll try to get some updates from our humanitarian colleagues on that.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. Some abducted students were released in Nigeria yesterday, but we know the armed groups have also continued to attack the civilians, especially churches. Does the Secretary General have a response to that?
Well, we're obviously pleased that we saw a large group of students released. We are very much concerned the fact that so many other students, young people, young men, young women, continue to be detained by armed groups. And obviously we're continuing to see violence. And I can tell you that the United Nations system will continue to work with the government of Nigeria to try to address these problems, notably in terms of the Safe Schools program that is in place in Nigeria. Okay, on that note, I wish you all a